What are some of the major personal financial pitfalls that you should keep your eyes open for when you're dealing with your personal finances? We're going to be digging into a big one today, so let's get moving forward. Welcome to the Plan Ranger, where our goal is to provide you with informed insights and a reasonable approach for managing your personal finances. Now, a couple weeks ago, we got a question in, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when dealing with their personal finances? And while there's a lot of information out there already about that, we decided to set that kind of aside. There was the other side of this coin that wasn't addressed. And what I'm talking about here is mistakes that you can make, the things that you can do are your actions, their habits and things like that. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff covering that already. But all of your actions and all of your decisions exist in a financial ecosystem, right? That we're all walking around and we all have to deal with, and it expresses itself in any number of ways. But we're all out there kind of dealing with this financial ecosystem, and in that ecosystem, there are hazards. There are things that you need to keep an eye out for, and so that you don't fall prey to whatever that hazard is. And so we started, a couple weeks ago with the first one, which was selection bias. And now we're moving on to this one, which is a big one, bad information. So bad information is possibly one of the larger hazards you really need to keep an eye out for. And it's also one of the trickier ones to see. If you've ever heard the phrase better input, better output, I would say that in general, the better your information is coming in, the better your results are going to be going out. So the better your financial decisions are going to be. The problem is we live in the age of information. And so that kind of, where you're getting your information becomes a bit of a problem, right? Bad information can also cost you a pile of money. In fact, we're going to look at how making one small error could cost you about $1.5 million. So stick with us as we get towards the end here. We're going to dig into that little piece. I have seen bad information be expressed in about 3 different ways that I guess I would classify them as. The first one is probably the most predominant, which is ill-informed, underqualified to be providing information or advice or guidance in the first place. In the age of information, anybody can basically set up a YouTube channel. Anybody can put their opinion online, start a blog, website, write an article for a magazine, go on TV, whatever. Work in the financial service industry. Just because you can sell insurance or sell investments still doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Those are predominantly sales jobs. And, when you go to get a job in financial services, one of the main things they're going to ask you is, who do you know? Who are the first 200 people that you can talk to so you can, hopefully get them on the phone and sell them, right? Get them signed on as clients one way or another. So even that, the people will think, oh, well, surely that person works in the industry. They must know what they're talking about. Not always. But let's kind of hop back one step, because if you're watching this video, that means you're on YouTube, you're on the internet looking for answers. And this is the most dangerous area to deal with misinformation or the ill-informed, underqualified opinion. One of the first things you probably want to look for is, what is this person's background? Why should I be listening to this person in the first place? Regardless of if they're exciting or boring or they've got great effects or, they've got a cool name, whatever. What is it that should cause you to trust their views or what they're telling you, the information? Why should that factor into your decision, right? Do they have a background in finance, economics, accounting, business of any kind whatsoever? And no, I'm sorry, reading The Intelligent Investor once, or reading Dave Ramsey's books or Susie Orman's books or whatever, just reading a bunch of books or a bunch of stuff online, going to the University of Google doesn't necessarily qualify you probably to be providing advice. And this is, where it really becomes scary is nobody will call you, nobody will tell you what you're not doing. Nobody will tell you that you're missing things, right? That you're leaving very important things out of the equation, right? So you want to be cautious about that, because when you see these people, you think, oh, well, surely there has to be some larger body of work that will shut down the bad information and only allow the good information to rise up. And the truth couldn't be further from that. I hate to say it. Usually it's the bad information a lot of times that's making it to the top, because it's very strong opinions, very controversial. It's very entertaining, which people love, but it's not necessarily what's best for you. It's a lot like eating your vegetables. And I know that we should all eat more vegetables than what we probably do. But most people don't do it because it's not very exciting. It's just not as good as the other stuff in most cases. So, this kind of becomes emblematic of that. So You want to look for the things like, do they have a background in finance? Do they have a background in accounting? Have they worked in financial services? Are they a CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner, a CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst? And do they have their MBA? Are they a CPA, a Certified Public Accountant? Those are the kinds of things you probably want to look for people if you're going to trust them with your financial advice. It'd be like going to a doctor, getting information from a medical professional who's not actually a doctor. They just read a bunch of stuff online, and now they have their channel. If you're not doing well, or if you're really looking for good answers, you probably want to see a doctor, somebody who went to medical school, right? And as much as people like to rain on the system, it's going to mislead you and all that stuff. Not really. It's just probably not going to get you the results as fast as you want to get them. And so I think that's where people try and circumvent, the system, as it were, a lot of times. So that's one of the first ones you really want to keep your eyes out for. And that's, again, not just on YouTube, but also when you're dealing with, anybody, financial services professionals. So the next packaging that you'll see for bad information is people who I would call zealots, right? The people who are so committed to an idea or, a way of doing things that they're unwilling to look at any other alternative options, or they're not willing to be wrong. And that's a dangerous thing. In the world of finance, which inherently involves risk, only a fool is ever certain. There's any number of ways you can be wrong, and there's always an exception to the rule, and that's why you always want to be careful people who use the always, the nevers, they speak in absolutes instead of generalities. So you probably want to be careful of that more than anything else. But when we talk about people who are zealots, let me give you a good example. You usually have media personalities on one side, and I'm going to pick a particular argument here. You've got media personalities on one side, and then you've got, let's say, life insurance agents on the other side. And this issue that's in the middle is whole life insurance. Media personalities absolutely hate them. And sometimes, in life insurance agents generally love them, or at least will use them a lot, become they're more expressive advocates, right? So you have whole life insurance here in the middle. One group hates it, the other group loves it. How can that be if they're both informed? Well, they both have, let's just say, a mild conflict of interest dealing with the subject, but realistically speaking, you've got both groups here who are unwilling to acknowledge the other side's point of view. And truly speaking, the truth generally lies somewhere in the middle, right? So personally, my professional view is, whole life insurance is just like any other financial tool out there. It depends on how you use it. To the man with a hammer, every problem seems like a nail. That's a problem. And both sides of this become guilty of it. There are times where it makes sense, and there are times that it doesn't. And this is the thing. Personal finance is nuanced, and managing your money is a nuanced and complicated topic. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You might just need to take a little more time, or deal with somebody who's willing to take the time to figure out whether or not these things fit you. One of the big things, when we talk about this whole concept, it actually has a name. It's called willful blindness. And, you'll tend to see that in companies or places who manufacture a certain thing. And even media personalities, you could say, well, they don't manufacture anything, but they do. They manufacture entertainment, and usually that's done through strong opinions. What I'm telling you right now is not a popular thing. It's not an exciting thing, but it's what you need to hear. You need to hear that it's nuanced. You need to hear that it's complicated. It is. There wouldn't be this multi-billion-dollar industry of people telling you how to do it. The people who are the media personalities telling you that it's easy wouldn't write 700-page books if it were easy. Planning one person's finances is easy. Planning everyone's finances and trying to create rules for all of it is almost impossible, right? So, these things, they have to manufacture really strong opinions about stuff. So even they have the thing that they're quote unquote selling, right? Ultimately, willful blindness is the deliberate act of not looking at information that could disrupt your worldview. So whole life insurance, if you've got somebody who's a really hardcore advocate for it, and they're telling you that you should use this life insurance policy as your primary retirement savings, they might not be willing to look at historical rates of return in the market. They might not be willing to look at, what the average investor gets as a rate of return over the lifetime of the lifetime of investing, because it would disrupt their worldview. They might not want to see that buy term and invest the difference could actually be a better fit, because it could directly threaten their income, right? People on the media side of things might not want to tell you that things are complicated. They might not want to tell you that in some situations this and in some situations that. Because sometimes people don't want to hear that. They want a quick, easy answer. And by the way, if that's you, I'm assuming if you're even listening to this at this point, you've probably already turned it off. But if you're with me, you're not going to get that from me, ever. That's not what this is about. This is about hopefully giving you the information you need to understand your options, not make your choice for you. So, they might not be willing to look at the fact that there are cases where it does make sense. So you want to be careful of the people who are zealots, the people who just head down, this is the way things are, this is the way it will always be and has been, and nobody can tell me different. That's not an open mind, and that's no way to approach your money. The final one, and perhaps the most insidious of all three of these types of bad information, are the people who will deliberately present or manipulate information to make you believe something, to sell you something, whatever the case may be, right? And there are people that do this a lot. They live under the saying of caveat emptor, which is buyer beware, that it's your job to make sure that you're finding the truth. It's not their job to tell you the truth. And I hate to say it, in some cases, of course, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm guessing legally speaking, they're probably right. If you're dealing with a financial advisor who is a fiduciary, right, who acts and is licensed and, operates under the fiduciary standard, they have to put your interest in front of theirs. Outside of that, it's a little more the Wild West as far as what people can tell you and how they can present information to you. So, people who are deliberately manipulating information to make their case or to sell you something or for whatever reason, that is a dangerous thing. And sometimes you'll see that with rates of return. Let's look at the whole YouTube thing. You have to ask what they're not telling you. So there's a lot of videos out there, I make X amount a month, or here's how I went from this to that. And there's a lot of things they might not be telling you. The presentation of the information might be disingenuous. It's to get you to click so that you then subscribe, so that you'll then, they can make money on your clicks and whatnot. And it's just a video, it's harmless, right? Unless you believe it, unless you see these people and say, wow, they're really successful. They must know what they're talking about. Maybe they do and maybe they don't. And the ultimate question is it what's right for you and can you do it? And are they providing you with all the information you need to know to do it? One great example of this is people who talk about you should invest like Warren Buffett. You can't invest like Warren Buffett. Let's just settle this one right now. There are some conceptual models and some framework that you can use, but you can't invest like him. When he buys a company, he buys board seats. He buys control of the company. He meets the people who are running the thing. He knows the managers. He knows their pedigree, everything about them. You can't do that. If you buy a share in Apple, you don't get a chance to meet Tim Cook. You don't get to really voice your opinion in his ear about what you think Apple should be doing. Not that he'd probably care. But, ultimately, when people present this, here's how you invest like Warren Buffett. I would ask, have you ever met Warren Buffett? Yeah, other than maybe reading his biography, maybe his annual shareholder letters, which are fantastic, by the way. You need to be aware that you're not going to be able to do that like him. And so kind of presenting the idea that you can do that in and of itself can be a little bit disingenuous. And that's not the only place you see that. There are, on the YouTube side of things, on the investment side of things is where you start to see really big people become very, very promiscuous with what they're offering their viewers as far as that goes. Stock tips and things like that you're finding on YouTube. I don't know if I would ever, me personally, ever listen to a single person who's offering stock tips on YouTube. By the time they've put the tip out there, produced it, uploaded it, and all that stuff, and you've come across it and found it, even if they were right in that moment, the moment's gone. It's passed you by. So that's just kind of another example of that, I guess, where it's, hey, I'm going to put a really provocative thing out there, such as buy these stocks to become rich, so that you click, right? So how does all this bad information equate to you possibly losing $1.5 million? This isn't a clickbait thing. This isn't hyperbole. Let me put it this way. Let's say you're 30 years old and you start saving. You say, you know what, between my 401k, everything, I'm going to save $1,000 a month all the way through retirement. Starting with zero, I've got nothing. So I'm putting $1,000 in a month and I'm going to save for until I'm 65. So 35 years. If you were to be kind of an ill-informed person, and let's kind of look at this, or even one of the first, the second, or the third category. Let's say that you believed you were going to get a 12% rate of return because you'd heard it somewhere that you were, for sure it's the average. You're going to get 12%. Okay, that's the average rate of return maybe for an extended period of time of the S&P 500. Most people don't invest like that. It's also ignoring human behavior. It's also acknowledging that you got in and got out at the exact right moments to earn that rate of return. What we're talking about in simple terms is batting, or let's just say pitching a perfect game. No mistakes, no errors. You got 12%. First, I don't even know if that's realistic. I'm going to do a whole separate video and segment on the idea of the 12% rate of return because it's a bit pervasive out there. The question becomes fundamentally, should you plan on 12% rate of return? Let's say that you did that. You're putting away $1,000 a month. By the time you got to 65 with your 12% rate of return, you would have $6.4 million. Not too shabby, right? Doing pretty well. $6.4 million. If you were wrong by 1%, if you missed that mark by 1%, you're at $4.9 million. $1.5 million. And that's not, again, some unrealistic figure here. That's just the difference of what we're talking about when we're talking about, a 12% versus an 11% rate of return. And because returns are exponential, not linear, the further out in the realm of expectation you go, the more significant that increase becomes, or the error becomes. The difference between a 7 and a 6% rate of return doesn't have nearly the impact as a 11 to 12. And so what we're looking at, realistically speaking, is the idea that if you're taking somebody who's saying you should plan on getting 12%, and you only come back with 9 or 8%, which might still be a great rate of return, over a long period of time, averages, factoring in human behavior and things like that, mistakes you might make, the difference could be half. It could be, $3 million instead of 6.4. It could be less than $3 million by the time you get to age 65, even though you diligently saved money. It's just that you were handed bad information, told to plan on getting 12%, which I don't know any financial planner out there that would ever recommend that would ever say, yes, you should plan on getting a 12% rate of return. In fact, I'll go so far as to say this. Once upon a time, I worked for a firm where if we were doing financial planning and the client had an aggressive risk tolerance, right? Scale of 1 to 5, they were a 5. The highest rate of return we could use in our plans were 11% to project their future values of their investments. And realistically speaking, we still had to justify why we were talking about 11. Generally speaking, for me, if I was going to deal with somebody doing a financial plan and they were more of an aggressive investor, I might suggest 8, maybe 9% is what you should use to plan. Maybe. But even that's coming under fire now. It's a really tough time to be able to call those long-term rates of return. So you probably want to play a little bit more conservative in that goes, or at least, as that goes. And I think that's what more informed views would suggest for you. So hopefully that helps paint a picture of why you need to keep your eyes open for bad information out there when you're making your personal financial decisions, and to try and be a little more conscientious of where you're getting your information from. And that's all I have for you today. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. Go ahead and click like, subscribe, join the Plan Ranger community. We would love to have you, of course. And if you know somebody who's struggling financially with their personal finances or dealing with a similar topic as what this video covers or what you're dealing with, please feel free to share this video with them too and lend them a hand as well. If they have any questions, they can go ahead and drop them to us along the way here. So thanks for taking the time. And until we see you next time, we hope this helped.